Hey guys, LootWizard here, another video on Gems of War, and it is the first day of the week, and so that means this is going to be another Soulforge video. Which weapons and troops do I recommend? And we have a new troop in the Glory Shop, and it is Guild Wars this week, so there is that going on as well. But in this video, I really won't be going over much of, or at all of Guild Wars, because I'm going to be saving that later this week for my new account that I started, and we'll probably be doing Guild Wars battles over there with the very limited low-level troops that I have, and we'll see what kind of teams that I can make and how many battles I can win on that account. I'm only like level 30, so that should be a little fun. And so I'm planning to do a few videos on those battles with Guild Wars with that account instead of my main one this week. So let's get right into this video. We have a new epic troop out, Krystenax, and so we're going to be going over what he does once we get to the Glory Shop. Let's head over to the Soulforge. But this is the event kingdoms for this week. Really quick is the Dragon's Claw Kingdom. So Dragon's Claw troops are going to gain a 10% to skills. So if you haven't used dragons that much, now might be a time to start testing out those dragons in your battles. And also, just as a note, I'm going to be doing something a little different at the end of this video than I normally do for Soulforge videos, so stay tuned for that. Nice little surprise at the end. So let's go to Soulforge. Start at weapons as always. And we have Explosion here at the top. Explode 4 gems of a chosen color, heal 36 life. I'm just not going to recommend getting this one because you can never boost the amount of gems that it explodes like you can, let's say, with Mountain Crusher. Mountain Crusher, the more you increase your magic, you can explode even more gems. This one's always going to stay at 4, so it's not that great of a mana generator. And healing life is it's okay, but there are better weapons that can also destroy gems plus gain barrier or something like that. And barrier is always better than life because it's going to stop, even if the enemy did 1,000 damage to you, barrier is always better than just healing your life. So there are better weapons than this. And now the weapon that I can recommend to get is way at the bottom. Mace of Claws. If you don't have this weapon and you already have your dragon class leveled pretty high, and you do have quite a few dragon troops, I would say pick this up if you can spare the diamonds for it, because there are so many dragon troops that are really strong in the game, and this weapon will be able to generate a lot of mana for those dragons. And some of the dragon troops have a lot of looping potential, because there are dragon troops that explode the board. That's really good for when you're looping with these types of weapons. Some kingdoms don't have a lot of strong troops, but the Dragon Claw Kingdom has a lot of strong troops, legendaries, mythics, and even some regular cards. So Mace of Claws is a weapon that I can recommend if you can afford the 300 diamonds and the jewels here in the souls. You don't have it, I recommend getting that. So let's move on to troops here, and as usual we'll go down the summoning stones just to see what's in here. There might be some cards worth getting that maybe you don't have yet, and that was the case actually for me when I started playing. Is like my first 600-700 levels I did not have a Xerus, and I actually ended up getting him here in the summoning stones. Because he is, I don't know, some of those troops are a little bit harder to get for whatever reason. Maybe your luck is just bad and you've been opening keys, and some of those epic or ultra rare troops they just sometimes they don't drop for you. So here's the first summoning stone category, blue, and out of all these troops, I don't know. I don't think I can really recommend any of these except for maybe Sir Wolfric here, but only if you are trying to ascend these types of troops. Now towers, they moved this tower event to some other rotation now, so the tower thing used to happen once a month, and I don't know if they're still doing that once a month or not. So you might want to pass on this card because I don't know how relevant the tower event is actually going to be now. But if you have the spare summoning stones and you don't have this to mythic yet, you might want to consider trying to get more copies of that. Now for the Green Day here, we have a few interesting troops. Spirit Fox, you may already have this in your keys, but it does start with full mana, and it is among one of the most annoying troops in the game, at least, when I've encountered it. It's a pretty annoying troop, because it will drain 7 mana from an enemy, it removes all yellow gems, and then it will deal true damage based on the gems removed, and the boost ratio is half. So if you have 10 yellow gems on the board, it's going to do an extra 5 damage. But it fills up pretty quick because it only has 9 mana and 2 colors there, so it fills up pretty quick as well, and you can just keep draining mana and doing true damage to enemies. And it can't be targeted because it's stealthy by single spells. So that's a pretty annoying troop if you don't have it, or if you want to upgrade it to legendary or mythic or something. Now time to probably get that. Crimson Arrow, I don't recommend that. It's not that great. Shocktopus, you might already have this in by opening glory keys. But if you're doing a full mech team, this is not a bad troop, because it will destroy 8 gems of a color that you choose, and then it will deal true damage to each enemy of that color. Fairly average mana cost there of 12. So, and if you're using a full mech team with the hero class, the mech class, that class actually, when it's fully traded, will give 50% starting mana to all mechs. So this would start with 6 mana. So that's something to consider as well. Moving on here to red gems. Red summoning stones. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything here except for maybe Scurvy Sea Dog. If you don't have this troop yet and you're looking for a troop that will start with full mana and just immediately convert green gems to blue, if you're looking for that blue mana immediately at the beginning, then this could be a troop that you might want. And moving on to yellow, same situation here. We have Lamashtu, which is another one of these troops that does start with full mana, but it is a converter, so it will convert yellow to purple, plus it also deals a little bit of damage. So that might be a troop that you might want to get if you don't have, just so that you have those mana converters. Yeah, so and Cockatrice is really good as well, but you probably already have this. This troop drops pretty easy from, I think it does drop from gold keys. So this is a pretty good one, because it will entangle an enemy, it drains all mana from them, then it creates brown mana, which it does take brown mana. And it's one of the few troops that's actually immune to entangle. There's not too many troops in the game that are immune to that, so that's interesting. And moving on to purple, we have one troop immediately stands out to me, and that's Nyx. Nyx is really, really annoying, because it drains up to 12 mana from an enemy, and then it creates blue gems equal to the mana drained. So I've fought against this troop quite a bit over the years, and it's annoying every single time that I run into it, because it will drain mana if you're not immune to mana drain, and then it creates blue gems, and it's usually combined with like Queen Mab and a freeze team, so that when it creates those blue gems, it fills up those troops, and if it gets a 4 match, then your troops are frozen. And so yeah, you might want to pick that up if you don't have it, but probably you only want to pick that up if you're going to use it, mostly with those freeze teams. So yeah, otherwise most of these other troops aren't really that great. Grave Knight has one unique ability to it, which is that it will eliminate all armor from an enemy, and then it deals a little bit of damage. And it doesn't matter what your magic level is for the eliminate all armor from an enemy. So that troop can be useful in some circumstances if you just want to eliminate a lot of armor from an enemy. But last summoning stone category, brown, we have I can recommend probably Turtle Cannon, because it's a really great mana generator. It's underrated, I think, among a lot of people. I don't hear too many people talk about the Turtle Cannon, but this is a pretty low mana cost here. Works great as a defense troop as well, because it reduces damage from skulls by 50%. And what it does is it will explode a gem. Now, it creates 4 green gems boosted by skulls destroyed, and boost ratio is 3. If you can explode a gem where there's 3 to 4 skulls in that region, you're going to create more than enough green on the board to get 4 in 5 matches. Now, one thing about this troop, I've been playing around with it over the months, and I think it is glitched, or it has a bug to it that says burn enemies when doing skull damage. And what I've noticed is that it seems to me sometimes to do like double or triple skull damage to burning enemies, and there's nothing on its card stats that actually says that. But you know, from my use of it, it just seems like occasionally it does like a huge amount of damage to burning enemies, double or triple. So I don't know if that's, I haven't used this troop in probably almost a month now, but it does work good with some beast teams. But I'll have to test that out again and just see if that's still going on with it, or maybe they patched it by now. I don't know, but that is weird. But it is a good mana generator, so I would say pick that up probably if you don't have it. And then moving on to our legendaries and mythic troops that are available here to craft. As far as legendaries, you know, there's not that many that are great here this week. You got Kurag the Dread, you got Gog and Good, you got the Widow Queen, and, well, Keelan here. Keelan's probably the best legendary to craft if you're going to craft one this week. Especially, Keelan does fit in a lot of different teams, really, but the one that he's most well known for is the Moon Rabbit team with Rope Dart, with Divine Ishbala. That's definitely where he's most known to be in. So yeah, that's the best legendary. The other ones are pretty much garbage. But now let's move on to the mythic troops. We have Jotnar Storm Shield. We have Arachnean Weaver, we have Fallen Valdus, and we have Vash Dagon. Now, out of these, I would say that the Arachnean Weaver is the #1 mythic this week in the Soulforge. Number 2 is probably Jotnar Storm Shield. Jotnar Storm Shield does true damage to an enemy boosted by barriered allies and giant allies. And if you have it fully traded, it will give a random ally barrier on a 4 or 5 match. And the boost ratio for its damage is 7. So it has a potential to do, if every single ally you have is a giant and every ally is barriered, you have a multiplier of 8 times 7 added to your true damage here, which can be significant. But I see this troop mostly show up in teams where it's useful for its final trait here of barrier. But some teams have like Dawnbringer, if you have that with this in there, and then a full giant team. But I would recommend probably crafting the Arachnean Weaver over Jotnar the Storm Shield, because it's Web is pretty powerful. So Web will reduce a enemy troop's magic to 0 until it recovers from that web. So that will save you from a lot of damage. It also deals true damage to the last 2 enemies, and if an enemy dies, explode 15 gems. Now, in its traits, all of its traits are amazing. Unlike some troops where you have like 1 or 2 of the traits are not that useful. This one has 3 very useful traits. It has Stealthy. It also has Impervious. It's immune to all status effects, Devour, and Mana Burn. And then it has Creeping Doom here, 75% chance to summon a web spinner when an enemy dies. So it has a lot going for it. Can mana generate too, explode 15 gems if an enemy dies. Plus, it is one of the lowest cost mythics in the game at only 20. So it's pretty quick to power up. We do have an elf legendary troop that can start other elves with 50% mana. So this could start with 10 mana, and you only need 10 more. So it's a pretty powerful troop in a lot of ways. Yeah, I think that's probably the best mythic here to go for. Fallen Valdus, I don't even have this one yet. It's one of the few mythics I don't have, so I can't really give one opinion or another. on whether I think it's great or not, but I've heard a lot of people that do own it say that it's not that good. So that's all I'm going to say about that one. Vash Dagon I do have, and to be honest, I really haven't played around with this mythic troop much at all. The few times that I remember using it, I wasn't really that impressed with it. It devours an ally, and then it will summon a demon if the ally is devoured, which it's devouring ally, so, you know, of course, it's going to summon a demon if the ally is devoured. And then it deals 43 scatter damage boosted by its life. So the idea here is that its life is going to be increased every time it devours, so it will increase its true scatter damage every single time it devours an ally. But this troop might be useful also for cursing enemies. It'll curse a random enemy when matching brown gems. So, I don't know. I really wasn't too impressed with with this mythic troop. I would still say that out of my experience, the Weaver is probably your best mythic troop here this week. But as I always recommend, don't jump on the first decent mythic that comes into the Forge. You want to do a little bit of research and find out which mythic troops are going to be the absolute best for your needs. King Iron Gut is absolutely really great. 100% devour chance at 100 attack. If you're going to do delves and you're going to push higher delves, it's also good for PvP as well if you have a way to boost that attack on it. There's other troops like Tina 9000 that I do find myself using more than the Weaver. There's Obsidious, which is also a really great mythic troop. And then you have to consider, like, if you want to farm metals really quickly, you might want to save up your diamonds and get Scorpius and Urali. Those are two mythic troops. You might want to get those two before you get any of the other mythic troops, so that you can do explore battles really quickly with those two troops and then get more medals, and so that will help out your entire team when you can get those better medals. So it all depends on your strategy that you want to go for. Do you want to get your medals quicker, or do you want to do battles in PvP better, or do you want to do delves better? And each, there's some mythic troops that perform better for each one of those tasks. So you kind of have to decide what you want to focus on first in the game before you start deciding, well, I'm going to craft this mythic and then this one, and then you're going to have, it costs 4,000 diamonds to craft a mythic troop. It takes about 3 months to get that many diamonds if you're doing your dungeons daily. So anyway, those are just some tips there to explain what's going on with that. Let's go to the shop over here and check out the Glory troop. We have this one here, and its ability is it will deal damage to all enemies, and then it will freeze 1 to 4 random enemies. So not bad at all. Actually, I think I like this troop as a new troop. Some of them are just, I feel like they're just filler troops just because they need to push one out every week. But this one actually seems like it'll be useful. And it's a 13 mana cost, straight up dragon from the Dragon's Claw Kingdom. And it looks like in its traits, it's going to gain 2 life on 4 or 5 matches. It's immune to frozen, and it will reduce damage from skulls by 30%. Now, doing damage to all enemies, that's pretty good. And the fact that it's going to freeze 1 to 4 enemies, that has a chance to freeze 1 or the entire enemy team up to 4. And freeze is really great because as long as an enemy troop is frozen, that troop will not gain an extra turn whenever it matches a color that it takes on its card. So it's a really great way to shut down a team from looping constantly. And so freeze is one of the best counters to goblin troops that have all these extra turns. So that is something to consider as well. This troop is probably really good for that. So I'm going to go ahead and grab enough here to send that thing to Mythic. But you could I recommend just grabbing at least one of these new troops every week, and it's a good way to get arcane trait stones here as well. So that's one of the reasons why you want to save up your glory, so you can get these arcane trait stones, and those are going to be really important for unlocking all those traits on your legendary cards and your mythic cards. Grab my Spoils of War here really quick. So yeah, that's what I think there about that new troop. It's a pretty good one. So normally I'd probably end the video right about now, but you know, we have a new legendary troop out, so that's what we're gonna go for right now. We're gonna try to get the new legendary. It's a dragon troop from the Dragon's Claw, and we're gonna try to get this legendary troop, and we can get it in event keys this week. So, and like I said in the first part of this video, that I have a surprise at the end, and this isn't the surprise. The surprise is still, the surprise ending is still coming. So let's go through this. And if you want to get dragon troops, right now is a really great time to open your event keys. You will be able to get possibly the new legendary, but let's see if I can just really quickly go here and show you what kind of dragons are in the dragon. So you can get all these great legendaries. You can get all these great mythic troops in the by opening your event keys this week. We have Elemaugrim, which is a pretty decent mythic troop. Now it's even better once you have it completely traded, because it's immune to all status effects, devour, and all that good stuff. But finally, at the bottom, it decreases all enemies' attack by 4 or 5 matches by 4. And that doesn't seem like a much, but when you put this troop in a looping team, you can reduce the attack of enemies down to 0 pretty quickly. It also does do damage to all enemies, so that's there, and then it creates 8 purple gems boosted by burning enemies. So you do have mana generation and damage to all, plus reduction of the attack damage on 4 or 5 matches. So that's a pretty good mythic. The Worldbreaker is also a mythic troop. It has the highest mana cost of all mythics in the game at 30. But it will explode 18 gems on the board, which pretty much is like the entire board. Every single time that you cast this thing, it's going to explode everything. And then it deals really high damage to all enemies. And it's immune to devour. And its traits here at the bottom, it will gain 5 to a random skill on 4 or 5 gem matches. So you have a 1 in 4 chance of its magic actually being increased every time that you get a 4 or 5 match. So that is really great. Sometimes I've used this troop, and all of a sudden, this 36 damage here to all enemies is like 50 or 60, and I'm like, whoa, and then you just one hit everything. So Worldbreaker is fun. That right there. Actually, you can't get the Worldbreaker. Sorry about that, guys. I was kind of getting ahead of myself. You can't get the Worldbreaker in because although it's a dragon, it's not a Dragon's Claw troop. Right here. So these are the troops that you can get in the by opening your event keys. But you can get all Elemaugrim, and the other troops here that are really great is Divinia. You will be able to get this troop. If you don't have this troop, oh my gosh, you need to get it. Divinia is amazing. It will explode all red gems. It cleanses all allies. It gives them life. It's even better when you have it fully traded. So then you have the Dragon Soul, and Dragon Soul is really great in teams for gaining souls. Everybody playing the game needs more souls until you reach like probably level 12, 1300. You're gonna need souls. So Dragon Soul is good. And then you got other troops like Lord Ember here, which will transform a chosen color to red. That's a really good troop as well. You got a few other dragon troops here. Dragonette's always something that's pretty good. Low-cost dragon troop for inflicting negative status effects. And Dragonian Monk is pretty good, and some teams will destroy gems in an X shape. It'll bury your random ally for every yellow gem destroyed. So I'm just showing you guys a little bit of, those are some of the troops you can get by opening the Dragon's Claw event keys this week. Now, the legendary card we're going for is Matron Dragatani. And it is a 15 mana cost legendary card. It creates 6 blue gems boosted by frozen enemies. And then it will deal 33 damage to the first and last enemies boosted by blue gems. The boost ratio is 2. So, for every frozen enemy, it looks like it will get an extra 2 damage on there. So it's not a huge boost, but 33 damage to the first and last enemies, not too bad. Well, it's boosted by frozen enemies and boosted by blue gems, so that could be the gems is where it could really get some extra damage there. So yeah, and its traits. its last trait is really great. Reduce damage from spells by 75%. The rest of it really doesn't matter too much, but yeah, that's interesting. I wouldn't say it's probably a deal or a game-breaking legendary, but it's certainly not the worst I've seen, for sure. So that'll be interesting. We're going to try to get that here, and hopefully we get lucky. I'm going to open 50 of these at a time. And we didn't get it. We got the Dragon Soul instead, but just as proof here, you can get the Dragon Soul in your event keys this week. So let's go ahead and open another 50 here. And we got the Matron Dragatani. So we did get the new legendary, and look at this. We got Elemaugrim. We got a mythic troop in here, and we got another Dragon Soul. You know, that's a pretty good haul, I would say. You know, you get a mythic, you get the new legendary and Dragon Soul. So you can, this is even more proof. You can get the Dragon Soul, you can get Elemaugrim in your event keys this week, and you can get the new legendary card in here as well. So now that all of that is over, time for my little surprise here. I don't want the offer. Time for my little surprise, and so we're going to go in here to PvP, and I'm going to show you some recommended teams for the Arachnean Weaver that I recommended was the best mythic troop that you could craft this week. And I'm going to show you a few teams with the Mace of Claws weapon. And then I'm going to put the team codes here in the description for these different teams so you can try them out for yourself. But the first team here we have is a pretty common team that you see a lot, and that is the King Avelorn Life and Death weapon, Arachnean Weaver, and Grave Seer. Now sometimes they put the Grave Seer up here and the King Avelorn down there. I'm doing the King Avelorn up on the top because it's one of the few troops that is immune to entangle, which means that there's nothing they're going to do with entangling it to stop me from doing skull damage with it. And then I have Life and Death, and then the Arachnean Weaver. Now, the reason why Life and Death is really great with the Arachnean Weaver is because the Life and Death weapon does damage to the last two enemies, and the Weaver does true damage to the last two enemies. So you generally want to cast the Life and Death weapon first, just to get the life low enough so that the Weaver can kill them. But that is really the objective there with that. So we're going to go through one battle with all these teams, and we'll just go through them here. And let's see. Now, the Seer here transforms green gems to purple and chants the strongest enemy. We don't have any green matching up with purple, so we're just gonna wing it here and see what we can do. I'm gonna go ahead and take that skull, and of course he gets all of his mana powered up right away. Even though we don't have really any purple here, we're just going to go ahead and cast this so we can enchant our strongest enemy, or our strongest ally, rather. And our strongest ally is always usually the hero class. Take that, and so we're going to do that. And once we get our Weaver here powered up, well, those guys died from Deathmark, but once you get your Weaver powered up, you can just do that true damage, explode the board if they die. It's a pretty classic team, but it's also pretty powerful. So I'll put a code to this down in the description below for this team. There's all fire bombs. It's almost I almost want to grab that. We'll head to casual just so that I can keep that there. It's basically like free money. The next one here is with the monk class because oh, real quick, I forgot to mention, the Orb Weaver is an elf class, so that will start with 50% mana because you have King Avelorn in here, and it makes elves start with 50% mana. But the monk class is also an elf. So King Avelorn can make your monk class start with half mana. Now this one, I am using the weapon that's unique to elf allies here. It's going to generate all that extra mana that I need. We're using Tuliao. Good mana generator. It's going to enchant every one of these troops. And then, of course, we've got the Weaver in that next spot. So this is another good team that you can use with the Weaver. And we're going to go ahead, once we get, we got Tuliao here, we're going to go ahead and just enchant all of our green ones. Now, he's using Yao, which is really dangerous legendary troop, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to web everything, which will reduce that troop's magic to 0. So it barely did any damage to me because of that. And we have the Weaver up again. We'll just cast that again. We killed his Iron Gut. And we could enchant that again, but I want to use this just to see how much mana it generates. It did generate enough to fill up the Weaver again, and that's going to go and finish them off. So that's a good little team there as well that you can put the Weaver in. And moving on then to Monster Team. And this also has the Weaver in it because the Weaver is also a monster troop. It's not just an elf, it's a monster. So these are all monster troops. I'm using the Dervish class, which is a monster class. A Crystal Axe here is a monster weapon. It will generate mana for all the different monster troops. It will create green and brown gems, and as you can see, the Bogstrider will use green, Weaver uses green, and the Behemoth uses brown down here, and this will also act as a secondary mana generator for 12 gems. It's going to do damage to all. Bogstrider is another mana generator, so I really have like 3 mana generators, potentially a 4th with the Weaver itself exploding 15 gems. So this is also a fun team to use. And we don't have any green to power up our Bogstrider, so I'm just going to go ahead and try to get one of the other things up here as quickly as we can before he explodes the board. So what do we have here? Well, I could go and let's take the skull. And of course he's going to get all that mana from those cascades. Lucky, lucky, lucky. But we do have this up now, so we can do some damage, generate some mana. And now we got the Weaver up. Go ahead and cast that, destroy those guys. And then we could, we got a lot of options here. We could generate mana with our Bogstrider, with the Behemoth, or we could do it with our weapon. And the weapon also does quite a bit of damage as well. So yeah, that's another really great team that could be used with the Weaver troop. And then moving on to dragons. I have 3 different dragon teams that I want to show you here with the Mace of Claws. Mace of Claws is craftable in the weapon part of the Soulforge. And it works really good with the Dragon Guard class because that is, this weapon boosts the mana that it creates based on all the dragon allies. And it will create a mix of red and purple gems, so it's good to have troops with purple and red in your team. So I'm using Tinseltail here, a dragon troop that will do a lot of different good things. Give magic to all allies and a 50% of each of the following. Dealing damage to all enemies, exploding 8 gems, or giving all allies life. So that's really good. Also, Fairy Fire random enemy when matching green gems. Tinseltail is a good legendary troop. Krystenax is also a good legendary troop. Now, you might be wondering why I have this in here, because it doesn't have purple or red. But the key is that it will get enchanted when matching purple. So it's going to get enchanted whenever the purple is matched. And between the explosions of Tinseltail and the Dragon Soul, it should fill up just fine. So the Dragon Soul uses purple and red, and that will also be the color that Mace of Claws is generating. Now, there is no way to make dragon troops start with 50% mana, so we do have to just start from basically the bottom. I do have them starting with just a little bit of mana, and that's mainly because I have the Medal of Anu, it's called, which allows for troops to start with 20% mana, and that's what's going on there. But yeah. You kind of just have to, try to match whatever colors you can to get your troops powered up. And we'll get the Mace here powered up. And that's going to flow and fill up your Dragon Soul or your Tinseltail, and then you can just explode the board, do your damage, and then it fills up the rest of your troops, and you can just kind of loop back with that. And then we have one of my favorite teams. It does require a couple of legendaries and the mythic troop, the Worldbreaker. This team is really powerful. It can even defeat life and death teams because it's going to do a lot of damage. And it does have cleanse, so if you get webbed, if you get death marked, Divinia is going to cleanse all of your allies. So this is a really strong team. Once it gets going, it's going to loop. So the banner that I chose for this team is a double red green, because the red is going to power up our Divinia, and that will explode things on the board and get more mana generated for us. So we're going to go ahead and explode stuff, and that's going to give us more mana. And once my weapon is full, as you can see now it is, now the fun really begins at this point. Also, one of the things that's really great about the Dragon Guard class is it has a 40% reduction to skull damage. As you can see, there is a whole lot of 4 matches there of awesome colors. Now all of my dragon troops are full, and now I can have the pleasure of my choice. And this also does 49 damage now because of the 5 added to a random skill and boosted my damage. It's going to explode the whole board, do all that damage, and look at that, it filled up immediately again. And that's because the Mace of Claws also creates a firestorm down here whenever you cast it. So that's going to really help us out, continue to fill up the dragons that use that color. And then we can cast the Dragon Soul down here for more mana generation, gain a few souls. It's a fun team, really fun. But there's a couple of things that are really good about... Yeah, there's all that, whatever. There's some really good stuff about the Dragon class. I'll just mention here really quickly. And I have mine leveled to 100, so it has max damage potential. But right here, it will reduce damage from skulls by 40%. It also will give 1 life and magic to all dragon allies on 4 or 5 matches. And since you're going to be getting that a lot because you're generating mana, you're exploring the board, you're going to get a lot of those 4 or 5 matches. That will also increase the magic of your Dragon Soul, of your Divinia, of your Worldbreaker, or any of those dragon troops that you have in that team. The things that are really great in the talent tree here is, well, I'll start with level 100. If you get it to 100, it has Fireblade, so it'll deal triple skull damage to burning enemies. And the Mace of Claws weapon will burn the first enemy when you cast it, if you have it upgraded, and it will start that firestorm. So, plus it has that reduction of skull damage by 40%. So the Dragon Guard class is probably my favorite class for the Fireblade, simply because it has that damage reduction from skulls. And you can use the Mace of Claws weapon, which will burn the first enemy when you do cast it. Now, the other notable talents here is that you do have Banishment. It'll dispel all enemies on 4 or 5 gem matches in case they have Barrier or any of those status effects that are really annoying to fight against. You do have this where it will barrier another random ally when one dies. You have Razor Armor. So if you have a lot of armor on your class, that armor, 20% of it can be added to your skull damage. And it has Vanguard. You can start the battle with a barrier. There's a lot of good talents here on this class, and Fireblade is really awesome there at the end. And Fireblade works really well with this weapon. So if you go in here, we can look at it. This weapon right here, once you get to the 7th upgrade, Flaming, burn the first enemy. So that's going to be really great with your Fireblade. Then if you upgrade it fully, you're going to create that Firestorm every time you cast this weapon. And that's going to work really well with your Divinia, your Worldbreaker, your Dragon Soul, or any dragon troops that use red. So you could go into troops and you could say, hey, I don't have the Worldbreaker, I don't have Divinia. You could go in here and do a search for what other dragon troops that I have that use red. You could put in Dimetroxia. You could put him in there because he's red. He does scatter damage and burn all enemies. You could put Shegra in there. He uses red, and he has a very devastating attack with turning red gems all to skulls. You know, you could put in any of these types of troops. Penlong here, you do damage to all enemies, and that uses red. So the Mace of Claws weapon can be used with more troops and different troops than the ones I'm just showing you. I'm just showing you here the teams that I like to use. Now, there is one team here I'm going to do a shout out to my friend Engconn. He's a great guy as well, and he shared this team with me. So I'm going to give him a shout out here because it is a really good team using Elemaugrim. Let's go back and do a battle with this. And it basically uses the Divinia and Dragon Soul, but instead of the Worldbreaker, we're putting Elemaugrim down at the bottom and we move Dragon Soul up. We're using Mace of Claws. And Elemaugrim is great in here mainly because of the decrease attack by 4 on 4 or 5 gem matches. We're going to get a lot of those. But Elemaugrim is also really powerful. It will do damage to all enemies. It can create 8 purple gems, and that is boosted by burning enemies. So this is a really fun team as well. So main thing here again is we're just going to try to get our weapon powered up. Our weapon or Divinia, one of those two, so that we can start generating the mana that we need. And once we have that mana generated, as you can see, all the attack is 0 now on the enemy. I chose a really kind of weak team here to fight against, but it reduced their attack to 0 immediately just because of Elemaugrim here. So that's fun. And there's also lots of red gems on the board. This is one thing that Mace of Claws works really well with Divinia because it's creating red gems. It puts a lot of red on the board, plus that Firestorm. And that red is really good because Divinia is going to explode all red gems. Now we have the Dragon Soul powered up. And, you know, you can just keep cycling those explosions, and it's really fun. So that's that team. Engconn, really good team there. So I'm going to put all of these teams in the description below. And, yeah, so... Sorry guys, I was a little late on this video and it's a little bit longer than I intended. I wanted to try to keep this video down to like 20-25 minutes, but it ended up going to 40 minutes simply because I like to talk a lot apparently, and I wanted to show off some of these teams and why getting the Mace of Claws and the Soulforge might be a good idea, as well as showing some teams with that Weaver troop that's in the Forge. So yeah, that's the end of this video for this week, and thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I really appreciate all of the times that you comment or give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate all that support, and thanks for listening, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Later.